Hey, welcome back, everyone. So quite a bit to talk about. We're going to go into what's happening right now with Trump talking about making his comeback in 2024. Also, his belief that Republicans can retake the House and the Senate in 2022. Not that far off. We're also going to go into some issues with border security, talk about what's happening at the border, and also talk about where things are at with Biden currently. And so quite a bit going on, folks. As you can see, I'm on the road again. You have to forgive me for the funky lighting, actually. But I'm here actually at my brother's house. It's a horse ranch, and it's quite pleasant. And good seeing you all here. Yeah, thanks for being here, everyone. Hey, Carrie McLeod, he said, hello from South Africa. Great to have you here. Yeah. Diana Private, he said, good evening. Yeah, good seeing you. Thank you. Hi from Missouri, Linda Manning. Yeah. How you doing, everyone? Good seeing you. Do I have a bit of an echo? Anyone else saying echo? Let me just check one quick thing. All right, should be okay now. If there was an echo, hopefully it's fixed now. Yeah, good seeing y'all here, folks. As always, I'm going to go over some stories first. After the stories, we'll go into a few questions. So if you have questions, please leave them in the comments. We'll try to get to them. Now, let's start with the first one first. Let's go into Trump talking about taking back both the White House and Congress. Epoch Times reports, Trump predicts GOP will retake Congress in 2022, White House in 2024. And remember, this is a bit of an update because Trump was previously saying that he might run for president, really, if, depending on how Republicans do in 2022. This seems to be the case that he's giving a bit more assurance that he's planning on running again. Let's go into it. It says, former President Donald Trump, in a speech to Republican donors on April 10th, predicted that the GOP will win back both houses of Congress in 2022 and the presidency in 2024. And this is what he said, according to Trump. Trump stated, quote, we are gathered tonight to talk about the future of the Republican Party and what we must do to set our candidates on a course to victory. And he said this according to a copy of his prepared remarks. And it continues, quote, I stand before you this evening filled with confidence that in 2022, we are going to take back the House and we are going to reclaim the Senate. And then in 2024, a Republican candidate is going to win the White House. So he's not saying himself per se. He's saying a Republican candidate. Let's go into it a bit more. Now, Trump made the remarks at a keynote address at a Republican National Committee, RNC, donor summit in Florida. Trump, in the speech, also told donors that he wants to expand the party. Now, earlier on April 10th, Trump aide and spokesman Jason Miller, so a couple here side by side, Trump gave his statements. Jason Miller also gave his statements. Jason Miller told Newsmax that the former president would place emphasis on winning back the Senate and House in the midterm elections. We already knew he was going to be working on this. See what he says. Now he continues, quote, obviously, I'm biased to who I hope that will be if President Trump does decide to run again. Miller told the network, and he added this, quote, but I also think you're going to see President Trump go after Joe Biden again in very strong terms with regard to the border. Meaning that very soon they're suggesting Trump is very likely going to come back. And remember what happened, right, during the entire Trump presidency and before when he was a candidate? Trump would use Twitter oftentimes to jump on very early in the morning, 4 or 5 a.m. sometimes, and write basically insults against different candidates, different politicians, different key players in American society who he disagreed with. And by doing so, he held them publicly accountable to whatever they were doing. Trump lost that platform when he was deplatformed by Twitter. But now they're suggesting that Trump, again, in very strong terms, is going to be doing this again very soon. I'll go into this just a bit more. He says both with the border and the woke corporate cancel culture. And so we can assume that Trump is going to be mainly using the issues of the border and also cancel culture as two of his main targets, at least initially, according to Miller. Now, briefly on this, let's go into this just a bit. Now, if you were Trump, when would be the most ideal time to make your public debut? Would it be to come out right now, for example, Right now, he's talking to people behind the scenes. He's talking to key players behind the scenes. He's not really talking publicly to, the American people, not so much. He's playing things behind the scenes. He's meeting with the key players. He's talking about placing candidates, talking about the strategy for 2022 when he plans to retake again the House and the Senate for Republicans, right? Behind the scenes, planning phases, getting everything organized for it. That's what he's focused on. Now, a lot of people are wondering where he is publicly, where he is in terms of the American space, right? Now, Trump is big on theatrics. Trump is also a businessman. If you understand that, and understand also that he's talking about launching his own platform because he's been deplatformed, when would the ideal time be, right? If you're thinking like this, theatrics, business, when would the ideal time be to remake your public debut when everybody is anticipating it? In my opinion, in my analysis, I'd say the most ideal time strategically would be when he launches his own platform, because the initial public reaction means that anybody who gets excited about it, anybody who's angry about it, anybody who wants to react to it is going to immediately go to that platform where he's making his statements. And so if Trump is really right now planning on launching this new platform, which allegedly will be some kind of YouTube/Twitter mix from what rumors are right now, we'll have to see, including as well infrastructure to make sure it can't be censored. Business-wise, I think it would make the most sense, my analysis, to make his public debut at the same time that he does that. And they've suggested that this is what he may be doing, what he's planning to do. And they said that that might happen within 2 to 3 months, and that was about a month ago. So really within a month or 2 months, we can expect Trump very likely to make his debut again with this. Now, let's go into just a bit more. Now, Miller noted that other presidents, such as George W. Bush, and again, this is Miller, one of the main Trump advisors, right? Miller noted that other presidents, such as George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton, didn't have much political sway when they left office, unlike Trump. And I'd say I'd agree with this, right? Let's go back and look at it. George W. Bush, I'd say his very poor, the poor image of him in terms of the polls after he, of course, left office really led to Obama being elected. Obama's very poor public opinion as he left office. Remember, he was ruling by decree. He was using executive orders to do whatever he wanted. When he left office, I would say that really led to Trump being elected. And you could say the same thing with Bill Clinton when George W. Bush was elected, right? Trump doesn't really have that. Trump has maintained pretty high public approval ratings, even among polling stats that probably don't really favor him in general because of the institutions behind them. Trump technically, right, even if you just go by the regular numbers he got more votes than really any other president in history. 74 million, depending on how you estimate it, right? That's a lot of votes, meaning that Trump still has a lot of sway, not just in, say, influence, but within the political sphere. And if you think of who would be a better candidate, right? If Biden is really the most popular president in the history of the United States, as the polls would lead us to believe, as they're saying, what other president would be able to deal with that? What other candidate would be able to come in and challenge him? Or is there any other person in the country right now who maintains the public sway that Trump still has? Is there anybody else in the country who's able to capture the American people, and especially conservative voters, in the way that Trump did? I don't think I can see anyone who could. And so I think with this, it'd be very difficult for anybody else to replace what he's doing. Now, going into this just a bit more. Now, Trump's advisor, right? He told Newsmax that Trump would be far and away again the favorite on the Republican side of the field. And he said that what Joe Biden has done to the border is, quote, an absolute travesty, not only with the human trafficking, but with the drug trafficking, with the fact that we have people who haven't been tested for COVID that are coming into the country. At the same time, they're pushing these narratives suggesting that lockdowns and mask mandates are still something we should have, while they're letting in people who have 10% to 50% testing positive for the virus, being held in close proximity to each other, and being released into the heartland of the country, right? Now he continues, he added that when Biden, quote, got up there on that debate stage for the Democrats and said he wants to give citizenship to 11 million undocumented folks, that's basically sending out via Western Union a telegram to everyone around the world saying, hey, come to our border. Don't worry if you don't have a pass to legitimately come in or not. We're going to let you. And if you get here, then you can stay. Essentially, it's pretty much what they're doing, right? They're giving a path to citizenship for illegal aliens. And also in doing so, you have states like New York even giving them large amounts of money. New York State, for example, is talking about giving them more than $15,000 if they can meet various requirements. So there's a lot of incentive to come to the United States illegally right now because of the way politicians are playing it. The interesting thing here is that Trump and his team are talking about using what Biden is doing strategically for their narratives to first win back the House and the Senate, and then to win back the seat of the presidency. Now, they continue. During his previous speech at CPAC in late February, Trump said he, quote, might beat them a third time, referring to the Democrats. And he said, quote, I wonder who that will be. And cheers erupted from the audience. And he continued, who will that be? I wonder. Again, remember that Trump is an entertainer, right? Trump is a celebrity. Trump knows how to work an audience. He knows how to keep people engaged, keep their attention going, and to suggest things in ways that people will understand the meaning of without actually saying it in a way that media can say, absolutely, this is what happened. Trump, again, during CPAC said this, right? He said, talking about the Democrats, that he, quote, might beat them a third time. He's saying, I might beat them a third time, suggesting he won in 2016, suggesting he won in 2020, and suggesting he's going to win again in 2024, right? Might beat them a third time. He said, I wonder who that will be, right? Teasing the crowd, suggesting, of course, if you were there, suggesting that he'll be the one running for president again in 2024. And he says, who will that be? I wonder, right? Teasing people. But really, if you watched his speech, he was deeply, deeply suggesting that he would be the one running again in 2024 for the Republicans, right? Now, folks, let's go to a couple other stories here. Let's see here. Now, real quick, I did mention before that we are totally demonetized by YouTube. And they have not shown signs of changing that, even though they've given us a path to try to contest it. It doesn't seem like we're making any grounds of getting that back. But luckily, we do have some sponsors. And tonight's episode is brought to you by Shenyun Dancer. And Shenyun Dancer apparel is markedly different from what is trendy today. Every feature, including the fabric, color palette, style, and cut, bears the distinct aesthetic of Shenyun. And keep in mind, folks, Shenyun, this is an American company. They're New York-based. It's Chinese Americans. The Chinese Communist Party hates them because they're restoring the traditions and culture the Chinese Communist Party destroyed. And so the really fantastic brand, fantastic stuff they do. But Shenyun Dancer clothing provides men with a classy, distinguished, and timeless look, great for everything from the office to the street. Take their polo, for example. While most polos are great for either the golf course or a backyard party, they might not be dressy enough for the office. Shenyun Dancer makes a comfortable and versatile long-sleeve polo in a classic cut. I have a couple of them. They're quite nice. It has woven trim in the cuffs and collar that add a classic finish to a shirt designed to impress. And you can visit shenyundancer.com and get 10% off your first order by using the promo code JOSH10. And actually, folks, on the note of censorship, YouTube actually recently deleted or removed 2 of our videos, claiming they violated the community guidelines. One of the videos they removed was our episode with Mike Lindell saying that election integrity is bigger than right and left. And so not only are they demonetizing us now, they're deleting some of our videos as well. Unfortunately, it seems to be the case that they are not rolling back censorship. It seems to be the case they're increasing censorship. Now, that said, we should have some big announcements soon on some other options. Let's put it that way, which I'll keep you all updated on. Some interesting stuff in the works, let's put it that way, which I think you'll all be very happy about. But in the meantime, we are totally demonetized, and they're deleting our videos as well, some of them. This is unfortunately the way things are going currently with YouTube. Now, folks, that said, let's jump into a couple more stories, and then I'm going to go into some questions. So again, if you have questions, leave them in the chat. I'll try to get to them. But first, let's get a bit more into what's happening at the border, because as we just discussed, part of the Republican narrative for 2022 and for 2024, in other words, winning back the House and the Senate, right? And then winning back the presidency. The strategy they're going to use is talking about the crazy stuff that's happening at the border and also this woke cancel culture. And let's talk about what's happening now at the border. Remember now, Biden has put in place Kamala Harris as vice president as the person in charge of dealing with the border crisis. And Harris is saying that she is not going to be looking at solving the issue of the border at the border. She's going to be looking at the root causes of these issues. And as I mentioned before, right, I said my analysis. I bet you that she's going to say the root cause is financial inequality. The root cause is global financial inequality. And I said very likely that's going to be the narrative. And we're going to watch them try to fix the issue of global financial inequality. And guess what's happening now? The story here says, according to the Epoch Times, Biden administration considering cash payments to Central America to control migration. Let's talk about this. It says here, the Biden administration is considering sending cash to Central American countries to alleviate economic problems that motivate their citizens to leave for the United States. Now, you're dealing with countries where most of the problems that people are fleeing are caused by two things: government corruption and crime. The government corruption is fed by the drug business, and the drug business is feeding the crime, and the crime is feeding the issue of people trafficking drugs, not just through Latin America, but into the United States as well. The open border feeds that. Do you think giving money to the corrupt politicians in these countries is going to stop the illegal trade of drugs, of which many of them may, at the very least, be turning a blind eye to, if not directly complicit with? Do you think that paying them is going to stop that? Let's go into this a bit more. It says, alongside the conditional cash transfer program, they're also considering sending CCP virus vaccines to those countries. The White House's Southern Border Coordinator, Roberta Jacobson, told Reuters. Now, she did not specify which entity would be potentially obtaining the cash. In other words, they're talking about giving these countries money. If you give them money, the question is, where does the money go to? How do you ensure it's alleviating the economic disparities in these countries rather than feeding the existing oligarchies and crime syndicates that run the elite in a lot of these countries? How do you ensure the people who are victimized, ironically, by the powers that be in a lot of these countries are the ones getting it, rather than the victimizing powers that be who are feeding this crisis in the first place? Again, she didn't specify which entity would potentially obtain the cash, but the program in consideration is aimed at people from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, which make up for the vast majority of illegal immigration presently occurring at the border. And the White House officials said, quote, "We're looking at all of the productive options to address both the economic reasons people may be migrating, as well as the protection and security reasons." What does that mean, right? The economic reasons. How do you alleviate people's economic situations? Especially if you're giving money, again, to the entities that are very likely leading the corruption, causing that problem, while at the same time you want to deal with protection and security. How do you bring protection and security to these countries, right? Do you send the military there? Do you send UN peacekeepers there? Do you give them money to hopefully buy them more police? When you're dealing with, again, really lawless countries, oftentimes where police oftentimes are working in some way with the drug cartels or others. And politicians oftentimes as well working with the drug cartels or others who are, again, padding their pockets with the money already being given to them and not trickling it down to the people who actually need it. Whether it's through, again, the crime, the countries run by crime, and then, of course, the crime systems persecuting the people who are, again, fleeing that type of behavior. How do you fix that by giving them more money? Rather than, again, fixing the problem at the border to eliminate the financial incentives for the crime syndicates who are causing the problem, right? We'll see how it works. We'll see what they end up doing in the end, but that's where things are at. Now, at the same time this is happening in the United States, you also have brewing lawlessness. Let's talk about this. First off, in Portland, you had Antifa rioters and others, what seemed to be Antifa rioters, set on fire an ICE building, right? This, again, immigration and customs enforcement, set it on fire and then barricaded the entrance so they couldn't escape. Now, it says here, Epoch Times reports, rioters in Portland, Oregon, tried to set fire to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement building, that's ICE, again, on Saturday night, according to video footage and local journalists. Video footage uploaded on Twitter by several users showed a fire burning at the entrance of the building. Rioters were also seen shooting off Roman candles at the building, potentially maybe trying to set it on fire. And so a small fire was seen in the ICE building's driveway, footage showed. The individuals were then seen placing wood and pallets on top of a small fire. And according to one uploader, quote, many windows have been smashed. Now, folks, if that was a government building, what do you think the narrative would be? Would it be that, again, these angry rioters are a threat to government power? That these are anarchists trying to overthrow the duly elected officials we have? And why is that narrative not being extended to people trying to maintain order and peace in this country, right? Now, at the same time, let's go over a few stories on this, and I'll talk about the broader picture of it. In Maryland right now, and this is a spreading phenomenon. This is something spreading right now. Maryland becomes the first state to repeal the Police Bill of Rights. It says here, Maryland's Democrat-controlled General Assembly on April 10th voted to override Republican Governor Larry Hogan's vetoes of 3 major police reform measures, which included the repeal of the state's Police Bill of Rights. Maryland was the first state of the Union to adopt the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights in 1974. 20 states have followed suit, but Maryland is the first to revoke its measure. The Bill of Rights had set out a due process procedure for probing police misconduct. Now, folks, let's talk about this. Let's start with ICE, right? One thing you have with sanctuary city laws is that one thing it does is it restricts police from communicating with Customs and Border Patrol and communicating with, again, Customs and Border Patrol, ICE, who does the deportations of criminal aliens, people who are here illegally and then commit crimes. What does that mean? Police in this country do not have access to international citizen databases. What does that mean? It means that if they arrest someone who is not a U.S. citizen and they take them in and they find the guy is guilty of a crime, right, on American soil, and they want to put him in the books, they want to book him, make sure he's charged for his crimes, what happens? The guy's not in their machines. He's a ghost. He has no identity, right? And what does that mean? It means they can't actually charge the person. They can't actually hold the person. And they have to release him back on the streets. And whether he returns or not is his own choice, because they have absolutely no way possible to ensure that this person is held accountable and is forced to return to court on the day they're set to attend court, which means that they basically are not charged with crimes. Up to a certain level, of course. Murder might be one thing. Stealing, robbery, drug dealing, probably not, right? It doesn't happen. Now, normally they would work with ICE because ICE does have international citizenship databases. And so normal law enforcement would depend on police, again, being able to communicate with ICE. What does this mean, right? It means you have people flowing across our borders right now who are not American citizens, who are not on police databases, who can tell police their identity is whatever they want to say it is when they try to book them for crimes. And then whether these people are actually charged or not and face trial or not for crimes they may commit is totally their own choice because we don't have them on the books. America, as Jedi Knight is noting, is becoming a failed state. What happens when you have a large portion of society, 11 million plus, right, who are held to a different set of laws than people who are here legally, American citizens? What happens when you have 11 million people who can commit crimes and not face criminal charges and maybe jail time for those crimes, while American citizens, if they were to commit those same crimes, will face criminal punishment? What do you have? What becomes of a society? This is one of the results, again, of police not being able to work with ICE. And this is, again, one of the bodies of law enforcement that is being attacked by these individuals. A body of law enforcement that you have right now, rioters in Portland, stacking up pallets in front of their doors and lighting them on fire. And where is the public outcry? Where is the mainstream media coverage calling out the lawlessness that is spreading in this country? Where are the people talking about the dangerous rioters at the doorstep of government offices, right? Why are they not using this narrative? Why are they not talking about it? Maybe it's because they want it for some reason, right? And when you talk about the issue of Maryland becoming the first state to repeal the Police Bill of Rights, this is a larger phenomenon we're seeing spread in the country right now. New York, for example, through its city council, as have different parts in the U.S., they've been repealing the legal protections that police have, right? Police normally have a certain degree of legal protection. And so if they arrest someone and the person feels they were treated unjustly, the person can file a lawsuit, but it goes against the department and the city has to take care of it. It means the police officers themselves are not held liable for every arrest they make every single day. What happens when you remove that protection? It means that police, every time they arrest someone, every time they talk to someone, every time they approach someone and say, hey, what's that in your hand? Hey, what are you doing, trespassing here, and so on. If the person feels in any way at all, that they've been wronged by a police officer, they can sue them. And what do you think is going to happen to police if every single encounter that their job requires them to make is a legal risk? One of two things are going to happen. They're going to stop doing their jobs, right? They're going to become reactive after crimes have already been committed, and they're just going to be an investigative branch in terms of crime. Or number two, they're going to quit. What happens then when you have police quitting or refusing to take on the job? You end up in situations like what's happening in Minneapolis right now, where they defunded their police and they're desperately begging people to become police officers now because they find that the crime and lawlessness is destroying the city, right? They find that people do not want to become police. Now, what is the option then for government? Now, who knows what the real intentions behind this is, but I can tell you what my concerns are. My concern is that the police in this country are typically very pro-Constitution, especially the sheriffs. My concern is that the police in this country, especially the sheriffs, oftentimes refuse to enforce things that they see as totalitarian, things that violate the Constitution, which under the American system, they are sworn to uphold. My concern is what happens when we lose them. What happens? One of two things happens. You get complete lawlessness, which is one possibility. Maybe they're going to let that happen for a bit. And then from the state of complete lawlessness, people might tolerate the creation of a new system of law enforcement. And my concern is what that new system of law enforcement will be. My major concern will be, my most serious concern will be, that the new system of law enforcement they create within that void of legal protections for the American people, right? A system to protect people from violence on the streets. My biggest concern is that they're going to do it from the level of the federal government. That you're going to have federal law enforcement rather than local law enforcement, acting as the main systems of enforcement. Because in the United States right now, oftentimes the sheriffs are elected officials. Oftentimes they will not support things like gun grabs. They will not support laws that violate the Constitution. They will make public statements, give statements to the President of the United States, as we had in many parts of the U.S. For example, I'm in San Diego area right now. One of the local sheriffs out here, I believe in Riverside County, actually made a public statement saying that they would not be enforcing gun grabs if the Biden administration were to make this a thing, right? Sheriffs are stating publicly they will not enforce totalitarian policies that violate the Constitution. What happens if they all quit? because continuing doing their job is too much of a legal and physical risk to themselves to be able to do it safely. They quit. There's a void in what happens. Lawlessness erupts, as we already see taking place because of, again, these sanctuary city laws where 11 million people can't be held accountable for many crimes, right? What happens then if, in addition to that, even the ability to enforce, say, normal crimes, normal law enforcement becomes moot because police risk too much in doing so, right? Failed state, lawlessness, and then people demanding some form of protection. Now, what happens if they're demanding some form of protection and they don't have a means to protect themselves? What happens if they maybe do have a form of protection for themselves? They have guns, but of course this causes mass, say, social justice, I guess we could call it. People taking the law into their own hands, right? Local community law enforcement, I guess we could call it, which is essentially lynching, which is essentially mob rule, which is essentially what we're trying to stop by having the very system of government and law enforcement that we have in this country. What happens if that becomes the norm? People will accept any type of order that is brought to them, right? This is one of the strategies when we talk about subversion, right? Demoralization, destabilization, chaos, conflict. Right? You create conflict, you create chaos, you dismantle things, you make things not function how they're supposed to. And then from that state of chaos, people will accept any kind of order you offer them, right? Normalization, the fourth stage of ideological subversion. What happens then if, again, you have lawlessness spread across the country and an official says we need to do something about it and we can't hire local police anymore because people don't want to do the job? How do they do it? Very likely, again, which is my biggest concern, they're going to say we need to create a new body for law enforcement. And my big concern is that it's going to be a federal level system of law enforcement. This is my biggest concern in terms of where law enforcement in the United States is heading. And again, the outcome, I think, whether intentional or not, that what they're doing is going to lead to, right? This is my concern, and it does seem to be the case that this is where things are heading. Now, that said, folks, let's go into a few questions for the night, and then I'm going to go into some maybe a little more encouraging stories, but quite a bit to talk about. Now, I want to go into some of the pushback against Biden because you do have local states doing a lot on it. I also want to talk about what's happening with Taiwan, and also want to talk about what's happening with Iran and with the virus vaccines because there's some big updates on that. First, let's go over some questions for the night. Now, let's see here. First off, we have Gerald Lanter. You said, Facebook notified me that my comment went against their community standards. What did I say? I recommended the Epoch Times to someone. Well, that's quite concerning. Now, keep in mind, folks, the channel you're watching right now, Crossroads, is a channel of the Epoch Times. I'm, of course, a senior investigative reporter at the Epoch Times. And yes, Facebook has been censoring us pretty badly, as have other systems. We are being pretty badly censored. To say that you were notified that your comment went against community standards just for recommending Epoch Times, that's quite concerning. And thank you for letting us know about that. Next here we have L.A. Rose. You said, question, what are the deleted YouTube videos still available on Epoch Times or elsewhere? Oh, you said, are the deleted YouTube videos still available on Epoch Times or elsewhere? Thank you. Yes, they are. So Crossroads, we do our main live broadcast on YouTube currently. We'll see. Currently, it's on YouTube. We also, though, have it on Rumble. You can watch the show on Rumble. We also have our show on YouMaker. And we also have, starting up, Epoch TV, which you can watch on the Epoch Times homepage currently, and maybe we have something else in the works soon. And so even the deleted videos, you can still watch them on the Epoch Times website, TheEpochTimes.com. You can also find us on Rumble and on YouMaker. This is from Beth Coddington. Hey, Beth, good to see you. You said this. Josh, what are your thoughts on the Texas case before SCOTUS? My understanding is they're requesting that the elections for Pennsylvania Wyoming, Michigan, and Georgia be put aside and the legislators choose new ones as the Constitution dictates. Do I have that right? Thank you. Well, we'll have to see what happens with, again, the cases on election integrity. You do have audits moving forward. You do have investigations moving forward. It's come to the stage now where these are now local investigations. They're not being done, again, from the level of the Supreme Court. What you have currently, right, is a kind of a funky system. Yeah, real quick. Real quick, Chosen and Faithful, you mentioned, oh, wow, Epic TV. Yes, one of the big announcements we're going to have soon around that. So Epic TV, EPOCH TV. It is a thing currently. And check out the Epic Times homepage for that. We have some updates to that hopefully soon. But on that question, again, you're asking what's happening with these elections. It does seem to be the case that, again, it's unclear whether the Supreme Court is going to hear these cases. They've not been doing it so far. But local states are working on these types of investigations. And it does seem to be the case that that's where things are going to start moving. And it seems to be the case as well that if Trump really believes that Republicans can win in both 2022 and 2024, one of his major focuses is going to be election integrity, which he has, in fact, been talking about publicly. And we can assume that a large part of that is going to be going, again, to local states and their state legislatures and to the state senates, and getting them to push for investigations and for election integrity laws to ensure that the types of, say, loosening of our election system, as happened in 2020, does not happen again. That what happened in 2020 does not become the norm. Now, this is going to be one of his big focuses as well. I can tell you folks a bit of background on this. I, of course, have some good contacts, including folks who are close to the former Trump administration now, but who are involved in some of these investigations as well. I can tell you that what I was told is that, and take it for what it's worth, right? I'm citing anonymous sources right now, but take it for what it's worth. That, this was a situation leading up to the election investigations under not just the Trump team, but Sidney Powell, Lin Wood, and others, right? They, of course, had the elections. Biden had a spike in votes at the 11th hour, which overturned the election results, right? It's like you had two trajectories going like this, and Biden suddenly go like this, and then, trajectory continues. And of course, they're alleging that there was fraud that took place. Evidence does suggest strongly that that was the case, as have many cases that have been investigated have shown. Now, what happens, right? They want to investigate it. What is the process of investigation? What is the process of forming cases? They need to not only look into the evidence presented to them, they need to not only identify people who are sworn witnesses, people who have allegations and are willing to go on record under penalty of perjury in making their cases, of saying what happened. What happened? You had them getting thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people talking about what happened. And you also had people giving them false leads, people leading them down false rabbit holes, essentially, to keep them busy in the very short amount of time they had to form their court cases, to bring legitimate challenges, to show evidence, to get people willing to testify, and to bring the case to court. Right? That was a very difficult process, one which was they were again being fed disinformation. They were being fed false claims, and they were trying to investigate which ones were true, which ones were false in a very, very, very short amount of time. Again, sifting through thousands upon thousands upon thousands of claims. A very, very difficult process. Now, I think that they anticipated the Supreme Court would have been the place to go for that. The folks I talked to said that, well, only afterwards, or let's say when it was too late, did they assess that the Supreme Court was the wrong place to go to. The proper place they should have gone to was the local courts, because the local courts could have dealt with it locally. And only at the 11th hour did they realize that that is where they should have gone, especially when they saw that the Supreme Court did not seem to be interested in even looking at the evidence that was presented. They believed, I think, that the Supreme Court would be more willing to look at the cases than they were in the end. The Supreme Court rejected these cases one after the next without even looking at the evidence. Sometimes with the major cases, the Trump team one, the Lin Wood and the Sidney Powell one, without even giving a reason as to why they rejected the cases. And so they should have gone local, according to the people I spoke who are analyzing the situation. They should have gone local, and it seems to be the case that this is the approach going forward for Trump as he again gets involved with trying to win back the House and the Senate and the seat of the presidency, 2022 and 2024, respectively. That is their strategy. Local courts, local politicians, local issues, and getting them to change things locally. That is where the focus is. Next question here. Let's see. This is from Ruben Duber. He said, I wish I could sponsor you guys. Unfortunately, I'm unemployed and going through oral cancer surgery. I'm really, really sorry to hear. Hope you pull through well, and really sorry to hear. And don't worry, I appreciate the support. And, folks, we are totally demonetized. If you do want to support us, we do have a Patreon and a donor box. The donor box is probably more secure than the Patreon, which you can find in the links below. And hopefully we're going to have something else pretty soon. And I know I'm teasing you all with this, but some stuff in the works, which will be better. Let's put it that way. Let's see. This is from, Shenyun Dancer is made in Taiwan. So I should clarify that. Shenyun is a New York-based company. Shenyun Dancer, which is the clothing line, is made in Taiwan. So not made in China. And as you've seen in the news, the Chinese Communist Party is talking about invading Taiwan. And the big question is what will happen to them. And they're saying they're going to fight to the very end if the CCP invades them. And so designed in America, made in Taiwan. Again, Shenyun Dancer, the clothing line that's sponsoring the show tonight. Now, this is from Debbie Wilkellis. I'm sorry. You said, sorry, the font is small on my little screen here. You said, Josh, please say a few words about the Matt Gaetz situation. Sounds like a setup. So Matt Gaetz, again, Senator Matt Gaetz, is being hit with allegations of sexual misconduct. Here's the story behind that. Anonymous source cited by the New York Times claims sexual misconduct. No source given, no information given, no hard evidence given, right? Anonymous source makes X claim. Sound familiar? That's what happened to Trump over and over again with these scandals they manufactured, right? Matt Gaetz comes out and says the anonymous source, he alleges, or at least the issue he alleges, was caused by an attempt to extort him, which he provided evidence of. In other words, if we were to look solely at evidence, the evidence is on his side because the allegations do not have evidence. The allegations against him do not have evidence, but the allegations he's saying of extortion or attempted extortion do have evidence. And he's claiming that the individuals who tried to extort him, they tried to get him to back some thing they were doing, right? They refused. The individuals apparently went to the New York Times and fed them what seems to be a false story, according to the allegations. What happens? FBI is investigating the allegations. And of course, if you're making criminal allegations and it's against a public figure, presumably it's going to be investigated by the FBI, right? Not unusual. Now you have the House launching their own investigation. In other words, a political investigation, not a real criminal investigation, based on allegations which seem to be, again, fed by someone who tried to blackmail him or extort him. And again, from anonymously sourced article published in the New York Times, and that's where the scandal is. My analysis, folks, does this sound familiar, right? Does this sound familiar? What happened during the Trump administration? What happened just about every month or two when Trump was president? Individuals trying to destroy his presidency were manufacturing fake stories one after the next. The fake stories were debunked one after the next, but after much upheaval within the public debate. And of course, the average American watching the public upheaval, if they were not being told the truth of the situation, they were being emotionally agitated every step of the way, despite the fact that the stories they were being shown were false. And regardless of whether they were shown false in the end, people developed emotional memories. And Trump became the trigger of those emotional memories, which was hatred and disgust, the sense that he was sexist and racist, and all these other narratives they tried shaping around their fake stories. Now that Trump is no longer in office, it seems to be the case that same machine is still working, only it's targeting the next layers of political enemies they have identified. That's my personal assessment of what's happening. Real quick, this is from Monica Morris. She said, Josh, do you think conservative grassroots are covert, incognito? I think currently they're covert only because of the censorship walls that have been put up, or relatively covert because people can't state their political opinions or political views online without being censored unless they're on the politically correct side of the argument, right? How many of you feel that you can go on Facebook right now and write your political viewpoints on any issue, right? How many of you feel that you can go on Twitter right now and support the politician you believe should win in 2024 and not be censored or attacked or targeted in some way? How many of you believe that you can get involved with a local protest and not risk, for example, a group like Antifa threatening you? How many of you feel that you can donate to a local political campaign and not risk having your, for example, information made public so they can dox you and target you, right? How many of you feel you could do that? The incognito or covert nature of the conservative movement, the silent majority in this country, is due to the fact that people are carrying out what is really political terrorism. They are threatening you for making political statements. They are threatening you for having political opinions. And they are threatening to target you if you're found guilty of their created, manufactured political crimes, enforced not by government, but by the woke mobs and by woke corporatism. Ironically, the big businesses, the millionaires and the billionaires, right? And the socialist oligarchs who run the whole system. These are the folks threatening you. And that's unfortunately the case. Now, here's where I see things going with this, though. What's going to happen now, right? What's going to happen? Let's have a look at this. Going forward, when Trump creates his own social media, which we assume is going to happen, and I'm banking my analysis on this happening because they've been saying it's going to happen. Trump is going to create a social media. What does that do? It gives a voice to him, first off. What happens when Trump has a voice? Trump is able to organize protests. Trump is able to call people names and insult people and so on and not be censored for doing so. Trump is able to state his opinion and not be censored. They can criticize him and attack him, but he does not care, right? Trump has a platform again, meaning Trump can organize, meaning Trump can organize protests, meaning conservatives can organize protests, meaning Trump can publish his videos and not have them get deleted as YouTube currently does. His video on CPAC, if we posted his video from CPAC, YouTube would not only delete it, they would give us a strike. And if you get 3 strikes, you're off the channel, you're off the net. That's it, right? Trump has a platform. Trump can organize. Trump can hold grassroots movements. Trump can allow other people to organize grassroots movements. People can state their opinions without being censored. Maybe they'll still be attacked, right? But they will not be censored. In addition to this, what does it mean? It means that YouTubers, remember what happened in 2016, right? Remember the headlines in 2016? Remember what the media blamed for Trump winning the 2016 elections? They blamed the alt-right, the manufactured straw man who became the enemy of the people, as they claimed, right? What was it? It was a large network of independent voices across the internet. They argued, if you remember the headlines in 2016 and 2017, they argued that YouTube was controlled by the alt-right. They argued that, again, independent YouTubers had become the leading voices on YouTube. People who were conservative were winning the debate. And so they said the only way we can stop Trumpism and, whatever nationalist viewpoints they were claiming they represented, that the only way to stop that was to censor them. And so what happened? They began kicking people off of YouTube. How many of you were watching shows that got canceled? How many shows that you were watching got canceled? What happened to Roseanne, right? What happened to, what was his name? The Dirty Jobs guy, right? Remember the Dirty Jobs guy? He was doing a show that Facebook deleted or that they canceled. What happened to your favorite YouTubers who you might have been watching? How many YouTubers did you used to watch who got canceled? It's because they purged them. And they purged them again because, as they stated back in 2016, they believed that these people, these independent voices, were running the show, that these people were taking away the influence over the American psyche that the media, the mainstream media, holds. Yeah, Mike Rowe, thank you. That's Mike Rowe. Yeah, Alex Jones, Joe Rogan. Yeah, again, Mike Rowe, Tim Allen. How many people got canceled? It's because the conservative viewpoints they were representing were the most popular viewpoints on the internet. And open debate, when it was allowed, exposed the wrongdoing and the lies that were taking place in this country. The other side could not win the debates. They could not win the debates. And so the most popular voices were the voices they had to shut down to win the debates. That's what happened. Now, what happens when Trump releases his social media and again gives a platform for all of these people? What happens? It means that the ideological debate in this country is back on. It means that folks who've been canceled, demonetized, deplatformed, again have a platform. And it means as well that anybody who wants to get involved with an ad network to finance these individuals can then do so without risking being canceled themselves. And so what does this mean? This means not just a social media. It means an alternate economy, an alternate space for people to state their opinions, an alternate place for people to find information. And what's going to happen? That new system is going to be waging essentially ideological battle with the powers that be. This is going to be what happens in this country leading up to 2022. And if the phenomena that happened in 2016 continues despite the censorship, you can expect the people on this side, the new side, to win the debates, because that was why they had to censor them. That was why they had to cancel them, because they were winning the debates, right? So get ready for that. That's maybe a month or two away. 1 to 2 months. We're very likely going to see that happen again. Now, as said, folks, let's go into a couple other stories because it's getting late, and I want to cover a few more stories for the night. Now, first off, pushback against Biden. Epoch Times reports here, Republican attorneys general plan to create legal roadblocks for Biden agenda. And it says here, Republican attorneys general are determined to mount numerous legal challenges against President Joe Biden, creating a formidable roadblock to the president's agenda. In less than 3 months since President Joe Biden was sworn into office. Let me get a drink real quick. It says in less than 3 months as President Joe Biden was sworn into office, Republican states have waged war on his agenda, suing the administration on climate change, energy, immigration, and taxation policy. But the conservative attorneys general, who started filing lawsuits in March, said they aren't done yet and expect to continue challenging the administration in court. And they said this according to Louisiana Attorney General and former Republican Attorney General Association Chairman Jeff Landry, who is leading 2 of the ongoing lawsuits against the Biden administration. He told the Daily Caller News, quote, "We are sharpening the pencils and filling up the inkwells," meaning that they're going to be signing a whole lot of documents, we can assume, right? Get ready not just for the grassroots movement, which, as I gave my analysis on, I think is really going to take off very, very soon and is going to be very, very big in my personal analysis, right? My personal opinion, it's going to be very, very big. Get ready for it. It's about to hit, right? 1 to 2 months. 1 to 2 months, this is going to start. And again, in addition to that, you have states, attorneys generals also pushing back. Remember, folks, when it comes to, again, the socialist agenda, this globalist socialist agenda, which they've really pushed through in a lot of countries around the world, most countries, America is a different type of system. America is a very unique type of system. And why is that? Because we are a United States. We are technically 50 different countries united under a federal government, which means 50 different states, each of which have their own political systems, their own laws, and their own ability to push back against the federal government, meaning that just taking the House of the presidency, just taking that office, does not mean you control the entire country if the local states choose to push back against it. We saw them do this against Trump. We saw, again, these sanctuary city laws pushing against Trump. We saw them do it before, and now the conservative-led states are doing it against Biden. This is what is happening, right? Now, folks, I'll go over a couple more stories here because there's a couple important things. First of all, Taiwan. Now, Blinken, again, the U.S. Secretary of State, he's warning that it would be a serious mistake for Beijing to attack Taiwan. And Epoch Times reports this. It says, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on April 11th that it would be a, quote, serious mistake for the Chinese regime to attack Taiwan, and expressed, quote, real concern about Beijing's growing intimidation against the island. In an interview with NBC's Meet the Press, however, Blinken stopped short of saying whether the United States would respond militarily if the Chinese regime were to seize Taiwan by force, saying he wasn't going to get into hypotheticals. He said, quote, all I can tell you is we have a serious commitment to Taiwan being able to defend itself. Now that's concerning. Commitment to be able to defend itself rather than commitment to defend it are two very different things. Suggesting that America is committed to helping Taiwan defend itself. Defend itself is the key word. Rather than saying we are committed to defending Taiwan as in America would step in to defend it. This is just analysis based on wording, so it's not quite clear what will happen, right? He said this again, and he referred to the United States' obligation under the Taiwan Relations Act to provide arms to the island for its self-defense. He said, quote, we have a serious commitment to peace and security in the Western Pacific. And he said, in that context, it would be a serious mistake for anyone to try to change that status quo by force. Now, we'll have to see what that means if the Chinese Communist Party were to invade Taiwan, as we've been discussing. It is talking about doing currently right now in ways more serious than it has ever done before, I'd say, is accurate to say. Again, they tested the waters with the taking of Hong Kong, right? The ending of the agreement over Hong Kong and turning Hong Kong from a democratic system into a system directly under the Chinese Communist Party, essentially overnight. Now, they watched how the world reacted to that, and they're now assessing, well, could we do the same thing to Taiwan and have basically the, limp-wristed types of actions against us that maybe last about a year before things go back to normal if we were to do it. Now, we'll have to see what happens. Would America commit to protecting Taiwan if the Chinese Communist Party were to invade it? They're not giving clear answers on that. But they are suggesting that America is committed to helping Taiwan defend itself, which is at least something. Now, folks, it's getting late, but I want to go over a couple quick stories on the CCP virus, the vaccines, because there's some big updates on this. Epoch Times reports this. It says, quote, CCP virus variant affects vaccinated people more than unvaccinated people. It says a study from Tel Aviv University found that a South African variant of the CCP virus affects people vaccinated with the Pfizer shot more than unvaccinated people. In other words, not being vaccinated at all is safer than taking the Pfizer shot with the South African variant. Now, the study, which has not yet been peer-reviewed, indicated, again, not yet peer-reviewed, so take it for what it's worth, right? Indicated that the B.1.351 variant of the virus, also known as the novel coronavirus, was found 8 times more than individuals who were unvaccinated, 8 times more than people without the vaccine, or 5.4% against 0.7%. Pretty serious margin. 8 times more if you have the Pfizer vaccine in this case, against that specific one, right? Now, Clalit Health Services, a top Israeli healthcare provider, not a minor group, right? This is a pretty prominent one, also helped in the study. And they said this, quote, we found a disproportionately higher rate of the South African variant among people vaccinated with a second dose compared to the unvaccinated group, said Adi Stern of Tel Aviv University. And he continues, quote, this means that the South African variant is able to some extent to break through the vaccine's protection. Now, the study looked at 400 people who received at least one shot of the Pfizer/BioNTech vaccine and had contracted the COVID-19 variant and compared them to the same number of people who were infected and unvaccinated. Moderna's vaccine is also used in Israel, but was not included in the study. So again, it's unclear whether this is just that vaccine or others as well, because they only studied this one. Now, folks, as I mentioned previously, one of the reasons I said I'm concerned about this particular vaccine, right, is first off, you're still in phase 3 testing with some of these. But second of all, because when you're dealing with coronaviruses, why is it that we typically don't have vaccines for the common flu? You have to take it every year at the very least, right? Why is it, right? Why is it? The unique thing about coronaviruses, and I've interviewed people who work in creating vaccines about this. I've talked with doctors, interviewed doctors who've talked about this directly because they develop vaccines. People who are not anti-vaccine, people who make vaccines told me this. They said the problem you have with coronaviruses is this. The normal way you inoculate someone, the normal way you give vaccines and help them become immune to something is through this method. You inject them essentially with a part of the virus. They develop antibodies to protect against it. Then you give them the other part of the virus, and they develop antibodies to protect against that. What happens with coronaviruses, though, is that if you do it wrong, they can use the antibodies to become more powerful. The virus can use the antibodies, if done improperly, and become more powerful. And it seems to be the case that on this study, at least with that specific variant, that is the case. It is 8 times more powerful, the virus in those cases, than with unvaccinated people. And if you're dealing with a virus that is still in the process of mutating, as we see here, this is a mutation, a variant that they did not anticipate probably to deal with. The mutation is affecting people with the vaccine differently than those without it. This is my concern with, again, things still in the testing phase 1 and with the virus that is still in the process of mutating. Cook X84, you said, Josh, didn't you get your kid vaxxed? Not with this one. Normal previous stuff, I don't really care that much about, but with this CCP virus vaccine, I personally don't trust it just yet. Although I know people have taken it, I know people who are fine. So take it for what it's worth. My stance on the vaccine is my body, my choice, and I don't trust it personally, not this one. But I know plenty of people have taken it. I know people I deeply respect who've taken it. Trump is recommending it, so take it for what it's worth. But again, be careful because there are studies coming out suggesting that there are risks with it. So that's the news, right? Now, folks, as always, I'll be doing these broadcast live Q&As every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. And this coming Tuesday, I'm on schedule. We'll see if it happens, but I'm on schedule to go on Tucker Carlson's show this coming Tuesday. And I should be back in time to do the broadcast. At most, I might just broadcast a bit later than normal, but we should be on time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. We'll keep you updated if we have to move it back a little bit. But again, this coming Tuesday, please again tune in. And folks, again, as always, check out the other interviews we do. I think you're really enjoying. We've been interviewing a lot of great people, really good perspectives, have a lot in store, a lot going on, folks. And as always, folks, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.